Welcome, gentle visitor, to a journey through the quiet halls of knowledge, where ancient secrets rest behind glass cases and whispered wisdom echoes through marble corridors. Tonight, we explore the hidden mysteries of the museum, that sacred repository where time itself has been carefully catalogued and preserved for curious souls. From fossilized dreams buried in primordial stone to butterflies that carry the colors of forgotten summers, we'll wander together through chambers where silence speaks louder than words. So settle into your favorite chair. Let your breathing slow to match the patient rhythm of centuries, and allow yourself to drift into the contemplative peace that only comes when surrounded by the patient wisdom of ages past. In the gentle pre-dawn hours, when the world holds its breath between darkness and light, there exists a lineage of scholars whose devotion to knowledge transcends the ordinary boundaries of profession and calling. These are the keepers of memory, the guardians of wonder, whose lives have been dedicated to preserving the fragments of understanding that connect all living things across the vast expanse of time. Blathers, the museum's beloved curator, represents the culmination of generations of scholarly owls whose wisdom has been passed down like a sacred flame from mentor to student, parent to child, through countless seasons of patient study and quiet revelation. His family tree stretches back through centuries of academic tradition, each branch bearing individuals who understood that true knowledge comes not from the mere accumulation of facts, but from the deeper appreciation of the connections that bind all existence together in an intricate tapestry of meaning. The earliest ancestors of this distinguished lineage were wandering naturalists who traveled across vast continents with nothing more than their keen eyes, patient hands, and an insatiable curiosity about the natural world. These pioneering scholars lived in an age when the boundaries between science and philosophy had not yet been drawn, when the study of a single butterfly could lead to profound insights about the nature of transformation itself, and when the examination of ancient bones could reveal truths about the eternal cycles of life and death that govern all existence. Through long generations of careful observation and meticulous record-keeping, the family developed what would become their signature approach to scholarship, a methodology that emphasized not just the collection of specimens but the cultivation of understanding. They learned that every creature, every artifact, every fragment of the past carries within itself a story that extends far beyond its physical form, connecting it to vast networks of relationship and meaning that most observers never notice. Blather's great-great-grandfather was among the first to recognize that museums could serve as more than mere repositories of curiosities. He envisioned these institutions as sacred spaces where the accumulated wisdom of ages could be preserved and shared, where visitors could come not just to observe, but to contemplate their place within the great continuum of existence. His revolutionary idea was that proper curation required not just knowledge but empathy, the ability to understand each specimen as a representative of its kind, carrying within itself the essence of entire ecosystems and evolutionary histories. This philosophical foundation was passed down through the generations, refined and deepened by each successive curator who added their own insights to the family tradition. Blather's grandfather became renowned for his ability to see patterns across seemingly unrelated disciplines, recognizing that the migration routes of ancient birds could illuminate the geological history of continents, or that the fossilized remains of prehistoric flowers could reveal secrets about climate changes that occurred millions of years ago. The scholarly tradition that shaped Blather's early years emphasized patience above all other virtues. Young owls in his family were taught to sit quietly for hours, observing the subtle behaviors of insects or the gradual changes in rock formations, learning to perceive rhythms and patterns that operate on timescales far beyond the hurried pace of ordinary life. They learned that true understanding comes not from rushing toward conclusions, but from allowing knowledge to unfold naturally, like flowers blooming in their proper season. Blather's education began before he could properly hold a magnifying glass, as his parents filled their home with specimens and artifacts that served as his earliest teachers. He learned to identify the calls of night birds before he could recite his alphabet, and he could distinguish between different types of fossilized wood before he understood basic arithmetic. This immersive approach to learning created within him an intuitive understanding of natural systems that would later prove invaluable in his professional work. The young scholar's natural inclination toward nocturnal study habits aligned perfectly with his species' biological rhythms, allowing him to spend long nights poring over ancient texts and examining specimens by lamplight while the rest of the world slept peacefully. These quiet hours of solitary study became the foundation of his scholarly method, teaching him to appreciate the meditative quality of careful observation and the profound satisfaction that comes from gradually unveiling nature's secrets through patient investigation. As Blathers matured into his role as curator, he began to understand that his family's tradition carried with it not just knowledge but responsibility. The museum under his care would serve as a bridge between past and future, a place where the wisdom of previous generations could be preserved for the benefit of scholars and visitors yet to come. This awareness transformed his approach to curation from a mere professional duty into a sacred calling that connected him to the eternal work of preserving and sharing knowledge. His sister Celeste chose a complementary path, dedicating her studies to the vast realm of astronomy and celestial mechanics, where Blathers focused on the intimate details of earthbound life. Celeste turned her attention to the grand patterns that govern the movements of planets and stars. Yet their work proved to be deeply interconnected, as they discovered that the cycles of celestial bodies influence everything from animal migration patterns to the timing of fossil formations, creating connections that span from the smallest insect to the largest galaxy. Celeste's astronomical expertise brought a unique dimension to the family tradition, expanding their understanding beyond the terrestrial realm to encompass the cosmic forces that shape all existence. Her star maps and seasonal calendars became essential tools for understanding when certain species would be most active, when meteor showers might deposit rare minerals on the island, or when optimal conditions would arise for various types of field research. The collaboration between the siblings exemplified the collaborative spirit that had always characterized their family's approach to scholarship. Rather than competing for recognition or working in isolation, they understood that knowledge grows most effectively when shared and combined with complementary perspectives. Their joint projects often produced insights that neither could have achieved working alone, demonstrating the power of intellectual partnership and mutual support. The museum that emerged under their stewardship became something unprecedented in the world of natural history institutions. Rather than simply displaying specimens for public viewing, it functioned as a living laboratory where ongoing research continued to reveal new connections and relationships between different aspects of the natural world. Visitors could observe not just the results of scientific study, but the process itself, gaining appreciation for the patient work required to build genuine understanding. The physical design of the museum reflected the family's philosophical approach to knowledge, with exhibit spaces that encouraged contemplation and reflection rather than hurried viewing. Soft lighting and comfortable seating areas invited visitors to spend extended time with individual specimens, while detailed explanatory materials provided context that helped observers understand the broader significance of what they were seeing. Perhaps most importantly, the museum became a place where the boundary between expert and amateur began to dissolve. Blathers and Celeste welcomed questions from visitors of all ages and backgrounds, understanding that curiosity and wonder are more important qualifications for learning than formal education or technical expertise. Their patient explanations and encouraging responses to even the most basic questions helped cultivate a community of amateur naturalists whose enthusiasm for discovery rivaled that of professional researchers. The daily rhythms of the museum reflected the natural cycles that governed all life, with different areas coming alive at different times of day and different seasons, bringing new opportunities for observation and study. Night exhibitions showcased nocturnal creatures in their element, while seasonal displays highlighted the amazing adaptations that allow different species to thrive in changing conditions throughout the year. As the museum's reputation grew and its collections expanded, it began to attract researchers and scholars from distant lands who came not just to study the specimens, but to learn from the unique curatorial approach that Blathers and his family had developed. These visiting scholars brought their own expertise and perspectives, creating an ongoing exchange of ideas that enriched the museum's understanding and expanded its influence throughout the academic community. The legacy that Blathers inherited was not just a collection of objects or a set of professional techniques, but a living tradition of wonder and respect for the natural world. This tradition emphasized that every creature, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, plays an important role in the vast web of relationships that sustains all life. It recognized that human understanding of these relationships is always incomplete, and that approaching nature with humility and patience is more likely to yield genuine insights than attempting to dominate or control natural systems. The museum under Blathers' care became a testament to the power of this approach, demonstrating that institutions dedicated to preserving and sharing knowledge can serve as catalysts for deeper appreciation and understanding of the natural world. Visitors often left with a transformed perspective on their own relationship to nature, carrying with them not just new information but a renewed sense of wonder about the complexity and beauty of existence itself. In the deepest chambers of the museum, where silence reigns supreme and time moves with the patience of geological ages, lies a collection that speaks in whispers older than memory itself. The fossil wing stands as a testament to worlds that vanished long before the first conscious thought stirred in any living mind, its specimens serving as silent ambassadors from epochs so distant that their very existence challenges our understanding of what it means to be temporary in an eternal universe. Each fossil resting within its carefully climate-controlled display case represents far more than the mere remnants of ancient life. These are time capsules that have traveled across millions of years to reach our present moment, carrying within their mineralized forms the secrets of evolutionary experiments, environmental catastrophes, and the endless dance of adaptation that has shaped every living creature that walks, flies, or swims across our modern world. The great Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton that dominates the central hall serves not merely as a trophy of successful excavation, but as a meditation on the nature of power and its ultimate limitations. This apex predator, whose reign lasted for millions of years across the late Cretaceous period, reminds us that even the most dominant forces in nature are subject to the greater rhythms of change that govern all existence. The massive skull, with its rows of teeth designed for crushing bone, speaks of an evolutionary strategy so successful that it remained unchanged for eons. Yet even this perfection could not protect its kind from the cosmic accident that ended their age forever. Standing before this monument to prehistoric majesty, visitors often experience a profound shift in perspective that extends far beyond simple amazement at the creature's size. The T-Rex represents the ultimate expression of predatory efficiency, every aspect of its anatomy refined through millions of years of natural selection to create a hunting machine of unparalleled effectiveness. Yet its extinction reminds us that adaptation to immediate circumstances, no matter how successful, cannot prepare any species for the truly unprecedented changes that periodically reshape the entire planet. The careful reconstruction of this skeleton required years of painstaking work by paleontologists who understood that every bone placement, every angle of articulation, would influence how future generations understood these vanished giants. The process of assembly became a form of archaeological meditation, as researchers slowly pieced together not just the physical form of an ancient creature, but their own understanding of how life and death, predator and prey, success and extinction interact in the vast theater of evolutionary time. Nearby, the Triceratops display tells a complementary story of survival through cooperation and defensive strategy rather than aggressive dominance. These gentle giants, with their elaborate frilled skulls and 3 distinctive horns, represent an entirely different approach to the challenges of existence in a dangerous world. Where the T-Rex embodied solitary power, the Triceratops thrived through community bonds and mutual protection, their herds moving across ancient landscapes like living fortresses of horn and bone. The intricate patterns carved into the Triceratops' bony frill speak of evolutionary artistry that served both practical and aesthetic purposes, creating structures that were simultaneously defensive armor and display mechanisms for social communication within the herd. These elaborate ornamentations remind us that even in the harsh world of prehistoric survival, there was always room for beauty, for the kind of excessive decoration that serves no obvious survival function, yet somehow makes existence richer and more meaningful. The Stegosaurus, with its distinctive double row of plates running along its spine and its formidable tail spikes, represents yet another evolutionary solution to the challenges of herbivorous life in a world dominated by massive predators. The function of those iconic plates has puzzled paleontologists for generations, with theories ranging from temperature regulation to display mechanisms to defensive armor, but perhaps their true significance lies in their reminder that evolution often produces solutions that transcend simple categorization. Each plate was carefully positioned to create a profile that would have been both beautiful and intimidating, a natural sculpture that transformed a relatively slow-moving plant eater into a creature that commanded respect from any potential predator. The delicate engineering required to support these massive ornamental structures while maintaining mobility speaks to the incredible ingenuity of natural selection, which finds ways to balance competing demands that human engineers would consider impossible to reconcile. The smaller fossils scattered throughout the exhibit halls tell equally compelling stories, though their narratives must be read in more subtle languages of bone structure and fossilized behavior. The delicate skeleton of an early bird, its hollow bones still bearing the impressions of feathers that rotted away millions of years ago, represents one of evolution's most audacious experiments, the transformation of earthbound reptiles into creatures capable of conquering the skies. This particular specimen, discovered in sedimentary layers that preserve not just bones but the faint impressions of soft tissues, offers a window into the gradual process by which fundamental anatomical systems were redesigned for entirely new purposes. Wings that began as simple display structures were slowly refined into instruments of flight, while skeletal systems were hollowed and lightened without sacrificing the strength needed for powered flight. The marine reptile fossils speak of another great evolutionary adventure, as creatures that had originally emerged from the seas returned to claim the oceans as their domain. The long-necked plesiosaur, its serpentine neck gracefully curved even in death, demonstrates how life finds ways to exploit every available niche, even those that seem to offer impossible challenges to terrestrial anatomy. The massive flippers that propelled these marine giants through ancient seas represent one of nature's most elegant solutions to the problem of underwater locomotion, transforming the basic limb structure shared by all vertebrates into propulsion systems of remarkable efficiency. The hydrodynamic perfection of their body forms rivals anything achieved by modern marine mammals, proof that the fundamental principles of fluid dynamics have remained constant across the eons. Among the most mysterious specimens in the collection are the fossilized traces of prehistoric plant life, preserved not as dramatic skeletons, but as delicate impressions in stone that require careful lighting and patient observation to reveal their secrets. These botanical fossils speak of ancient forests that stretched across landscapes now buried beneath miles of sediment and stone, their leaves and branches creating ecosystems that supported the massive herbivores whose bones dominate the more dramatic displays. The fern impressions, their fronds spread in patterns that mirror modern species yet belong to evolutionary lineages that vanished long before the first flower bloomed, remind us that the plant kingdom has its own epic stories of innovation and extinction. These ancient forests, dominated by massive tree ferns and primitive conifers, created the oxygen-rich atmosphere that made possible the evolution of the giant creatures whose fossils now attract the most attention from museum visitors. The invertebrate fossils, often overlooked by visitors drawn to the more spectacular vertebrate displays, actually represent the vast majority of ancient life and tell the most complete stories of evolutionary experimentation and success. Trilobites, those segmented arthropods that dominated the seas for nearly 300 million years, developed sophisticated compound eyes and complex social behaviors that allowed them to colonize virtually every marine environment on the planet. The incredible diversity of trilobite forms, from tiny species no larger than a fingernail to giants the size of dinner plates, demonstrates evolution's capacity for endless variation on successful themes. Some species developed elaborate spines and defensive structures, while others became so streamlined they could swim through open water like ancient submarines. Their compound eyes, preserved in perfect detail in some specimens, represent some of the most sophisticated visual systems ever developed by any organism. The ammonite fossils, with their perfect spiral shells, following mathematical principles that would not be formally described by human mathematicians for millions of years, speak of the deep connections between natural forms and abstract mathematical relationships. These extinct cephalopods, related to modern squid and octopi, created shells that grew according to precise logarithmic spirals, their chambers adding in perfect sequence to maintain optimal buoyancy as the creatures grew throughout their lives. The variety of ammonite shell forms rivals that of any modern group, with species developing shells that were smooth and streamlined, elaborately ribbed and ornamented, or equipped with defensive spines and projections. Some grew to enormous sizes, their shells reaching diameters of more than 6 feet, while others remained tiny throughout their lives, specializing in exploiting microscopic prey that larger species could not efficiently capture. Each fossil in the museum's collection underwent its own unique journey from living organism to mineralized artifact, a process that required precisely the right combination of environmental conditions to preserve organic materials long enough for mineral replacement to occur. The majority of creatures that lived in ancient times left no trace of their existence, their bodies consumed by scavengers or decomposed completely before fossilization could begin. The specimens that survived this improbable preservation process represent an infinitesimally small sample of ancient life, yet they provide enough information to reconstruct entire ecosystems and evolutionary relationships with remarkable accuracy. The careful study of fossil assemblages reveals not just individual species, but the complex webs of interaction that connected predators and prey, competitors and symbionts in ecological relationships that persisted for millions of years. The process of fossilization itself becomes a meditation on the nature of permanence and change, as organic molecules are gradually replaced by minerals that preserve the exact three-dimensional structure of living tissues while transforming them into something entirely different. The bone that once supported a living, breathing creature becomes stone, yet retains enough of its original architecture to tell detailed stories about how that creature lived, moved, and interacted with its environment. Modern paleontological techniques have transformed our ability to read these stone archives, using scanning electron microscopes to examine cellular structures preserved in fossilized bone, or employing chemical analysis to determine the diet and metabolism of creatures that died millions of years ago. Some specimens preserve evidence of injuries and healing, documenting individual dramas of survival and adaptation that played out across prehistoric landscapes. The seasonal exhibitions in the fossil wing often focus on specific time periods or evolutionary transitions, allowing visitors to trace the gradual changes that transformed life on Earth from one era to another. The Permian-Triassic extinction event, which eliminated more than 90% of all species and came closer than any other catastrophe to ending life on Earth entirely, is documented through fossil assemblages that show the gradual disappearance of dominant groups and their replacement by entirely new evolutionary experiments. The recovery from this near-total catastrophe demonstrates life's incredible resilience and creativity as surviving lineages rapidly diversified to fill empty ecological niches and develop entirely new body plans and lifestyles. The early dinosaurs that emerged from this period of rapid evolution were small, relatively unspecialized creatures that gave no hint of the giants they would eventually become, yet they carried within their genetic makeup the potential for innovations that would dominate terrestrial ecosystems for the next 165 million years. The museum's fossil preparation laboratory, visible to visitors through large windows, provides ongoing demonstrations of the painstaking work required to extract ancient specimens from the rock matrices that have protected them for millions of years. Skilled preparators use dental picks and pneumatic tools to carefully remove sediment grain by grain, revealing bones and shells with the patience of master sculptors working to free figures hidden within blocks of marble. This preparation process often takes months or years for a single specimen, as preparators must balance the need to expose fossil details with the requirement to preserve fragile mineralized structures that may crumble at the slightest touch. The work requires not just technical skill but deep understanding of anatomy and fossilization processes, as preparators must be able to distinguish between original bone and surrounding rock even when both have similar colors and textures. The educational programs built around the fossil collection emphasize not just the spectacular nature of individual specimens, but the scientific methods used to interpret their significance and place them within the broader context of Biphytomis, Earth's history. Young visitors learn to think like paleontologists, examining evidence and drawing conclusions about ancient environments and behaviors based on careful observation and logical reasoning. These programs often culminate in fossil hunting expeditions to local quarries and beaches, where participants experience the excitement of discovery firsthand, while learning to distinguish between genuine fossils and the many rocks and minerals that can resemble preserved remains. The rarity of significant fossil finds makes each discovery precious, teaching patience and persistence while demonstrating that the most important scientific insights often emerge from long periods of careful searching and systematic investigation. The fossil wing serves ultimately as more than a repository of ancient specimens or an educational resource about evolutionary history. It functions as a philosophical meditation on the nature of time itself, challenging visitors to expand their conception of what constitutes a meaningful timescale and to consider their own place within the vast continuum of life that stretches from the first simple cells to the complex ecosystems of the present day. In the quiet hours when the museum closes to public visitors and the fossil displays rest in peaceful darkness, these ancient ambassadors from vanished worlds continue their silent testimony to the creativity and resilience of life itself. They remind us that extinction is not defeat but transformation, that endings are also beginnings, and that the story of life on Earth is far grander and more complex than any single species, including our own, could fully comprehend within the brief span of individual existence. In the hushed galleries where specimens rest in eternal stillness behind protective glass, there exists a parallel world of extraordinary complexity and intelligence that most visitors never fully comprehend. The insect collection, with its countless drawers of carefully pinned specimens and its living displays of creatures that move with purposes as ancient as life itself, reveals networks of communication, cooperation, and survival that rival anything achieved by the larger and more obviously charismatic inhabitants of our planet. These miniature marvels, often dismissed as simple automatons driven by nothing more than basic instinct, actually represent some of the most sophisticated social organizations and problem-solving capabilities found anywhere in the natural world. Their kingdoms operate according to principles that human societies have only recently begun to understand. Their technologies surpass our own in efficiency and sustainability, and their communication systems convey information with a precision that puts our most advanced networks to shame. The honeybee colonies that thrive in the museum's outdoor garden demonstrate organizational abilities that would challenge any human corporation or government institution. These remarkable insects have developed a form of collective intelligence that emerges from the interactions of thousands of individuals, each one playing a specialized role within a society that functions with clockwork precision yet maintains the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances with remarkable speed and effectiveness. Within the hexagonal perfection of their wax combs, the bees have created architectural marvels that optimize storage capacity while minimizing material usage, their geometric precision calculated through millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The angles of each cell, the thickness of each wall, the spacing between parallel sheets of comb, every aspect represents a mathematical solution to complex engineering problems that human architects are only beginning to appreciate. The waggle dance performed by returning foragers on the vertical surfaces of the comb constitutes one of nature's most sophisticated information transfer systems, conveying not just the location of distant food sources, but precise details about their quality, quantity, and accessibility. Through the rhythm of their movements, the angle of their approach, and the intensity of their vibrations, these tiny dancers communicate complex three-dimensional maps that allow their sisters to navigate directly to resources that may be miles away from the hive. The seasonal cycles that govern bee society reflect an understanding of temporal patterns that spans not just individual lifetimes but generations of collective memory encoded within the social structure itself. Worker bees born in spring carry different genetic instructions than those born in autumn, their bodies and behaviors optimized for the specific challenges their colony will face during their brief but crucial lives. The butterfly specimens mounted in their display cases represent creatures that have mastered one of nature's most profound transformations, their life cycles embodying the deepest mysteries of growth, change, and spiritual renewal. The monarch butterflies, with their distinctive orange and black wing patterns, undertake migrations that span entire continents, following routes that individual insects have never traveled before, yet navigate with precision that suggests access to information systems beyond our current understanding. The metamorphosis from crawling caterpillar to soaring butterfly represents more than simple physical transformation. It constitutes a complete reorganization of identity, purpose, and capability that few other creatures experience in such dramatic form. Within the sealed chamber of the chrysalis, the caterpillar's body essentially dissolves, its tissues breaking down into a nutrient soup from which entirely new organs, appendages, and systems emerge according to genetic instructions that lay dormant throughout the creature's earthbound phase of existence. The wings that emerge from this transformation carry not just the pigments that create their stunning visual displays, but also microscopic structures that manipulate light in ways that create colors more vivid and varied than any human artist could achieve with conventional materials. The iridescent blues of a morpho butterfly result not from pigmentation, but from interference patterns created by regularly spaced ridges on individual wing scales, each one acting as a tiny optical instrument that splits white light into its component wavelengths. The elaborate eye spots that adorn many butterfly wings serve functions that extend far beyond simple decoration, creating optical illusions that confuse predators and communicate specific information to potential mates. These patterns often incorporate elements that mimic the appearance of much larger and more dangerous creatures, transforming a fragile insect into something that appears formidable enough to discourage attack from birds and other predators. The nocturnal moths, often overshadowed by their more colorful diurnal relatives, have developed their own remarkable adaptations for life in the darkness. Their feathery antennae can detect individual molecules of pheromones across distances of several miles, allowing males to locate potential mates through chemical signals so faint that the most sensitive human instruments struggle to measure them. These chemical communication networks create invisible highways across the night landscape, connecting scattered individuals into breeding populations that maintain genetic diversity across vast geographic ranges. The sphinx moths, with their powerful flight muscles and streamlined bodies, demonstrate flying abilities that rival those of hummingbirds, hovering motionless before flowers, while their long proboscises extract nectar from blooms that have evolved specifically to accommodate their feeding behavior. The co-evolution between these moths and their favored flowers represents millions of years of mutual adaptation, creating partnerships so intimate that many plant species cannot reproduce successfully without their specific pollinator partners. The beetle collection reveals the incredible diversity of form and function that characterizes the most successful group of animals on Earth, with species that have adapted to virtually every conceivable ecological niche from the deepest caves to the highest mountain peaks. Their hard wing covers, or elytra, protect delicate flying wings while providing armored protection that allows them to survive in environments that would destroy more fragile insects. The massive rhinoceros beetles demonstrate strength capabilities that dwarf those of any vertebrate relative to body size, their horn-like projections and powerful legs allowing them to move objects more than 50 times their own weight. These contests of strength serve not just practical functions in competition for mates and territory, but create evolutionary pressures that drive the development of ever more elaborate and powerful body forms. The intricate patterns carved into beetle wing covers often serve dual purposes, providing both camouflage that helps them blend into their preferred habitats and structural reinforcement that strengthens their protective armor. The metallic sheens displayed by many species result from microscopic structures that reflect light in ways that create colors of startling intensity and purity, their surfaces acting as natural mirrors that can be seen from considerable distances. The social insects represent the pinnacle of cooperative behavior, in the insect world, their colonies functioning as superorganisms in which individual identity becomes subordinated to collective purpose. The termite colonies that thrive in warmer climates construct architectural marvels that rival any human city in complexity and efficiency, their towering mounds equipped with sophisticated ventilation systems that maintain optimal temperature and humidity levels throughout their underground chambers. The fungus gardens cultivated by leafcutter ants demonstrate agricultural techniques that predate human farming by millions of years, their workers harvesting fresh vegetation, not for immediate consumption, but as substrate for the specialized fungi that provide the colony's primary food source. These agricultural systems require careful management of moisture, temperature, and nutrient levels, with different castes of workers specializing in various aspects of the cultivation process. The defensive strategies employed by ant colonies reveal military tactics that would impress any human strategist, with specialized soldier castes equipped with massive mandibles or chemical weapons that can repel invaders many times their size. Some species coordinate their attacks through complex pheromone signals that allow thousands of individuals to respond to threats as a unified fighting force, their movements precisely coordinated despite the absence of any central command structure. The migration patterns followed by various insect species create invisible networks that span continents and connect ecosystems separated by vast distances. The dragonflies that appear seasonally in the museum's garden may have hatched in wetlands hundreds of miles away, their journey guided by navigation systems that incorporate celestial cues, magnetic field detection, and geographical landmarks in ways that researchers are only beginning to understand. The timing of these migrations often coincides with specific weather patterns, flowering schedules, or other natural events, suggesting that insects maintain awareness of large-scale environmental cycles that extend far beyond their immediate sensory range. The monarch butterfly populations that overwinter in specific mountain forests have never been to those locations before, yet they navigate to the exact same trees used by their great-great-grandparents, following genetic instructions that preserve geographical information across multiple generations. The pollination services provided by insects represent one of the most important ecological functions performed by any group of organisms, with more than 80% of flowering plants depending on insect visitors for successful reproduction. This relationship has shaped the evolution of both partners, creating flowers that advertise their rewards through specific colors, scents, and patterns, while developing insects with increasingly specialized feeding apparatus and foraging behaviors. The bee families that specialize in particular types of flowers often show anatomical adaptations that mirror the specific requirements of their preferred plants. Their body size, tongue length, and behavioral patterns perfectly match to the resources they exploit. Some relationships have become so intimate that neither partner can survive without the other, creating evolutionary partnerships that have persisted for millions of years. The museum's living insect displays allow visitors to observe these remarkable creatures in action, watching as leafcutter ants maintain their fungus gardens, honeybees perform their waggle dances, and butterflies emerge from their chrysalides in real time. These observations reveal behaviors and interactions that preserved specimens cannot convey, demonstrating the dynamic complexity of insect societies and their sophisticated responses to changing environmental conditions. The nocturnal insects that become active after the museum closes create their own parallel world of activity and interaction, their sounds and movements contributing to nighttime soundscapes that most visitors never experience. The cricket choruses that emerge on warm evenings involve complex acoustic interactions, with individual males adjusting their calling patterns in response to the songs of nearby competitors, creating musical compositions that change throughout the night. as different species take their turns in the spotlight. The maintenance of the insect collection requires specialized knowledge and techniques that differ significantly from those used for other types of specimens. As the delicate nature of insect bodies and their susceptibility to pest damage demands constant vigilance and careful environmental control, the preservation of wing scales, antenna structures, and other minute anatomical features requires mounting techniques that protect fragile elements while positioning specimens for optimal viewing and study. Perhaps most remarkably, the insect collection serves as a window into evolutionary processes that operate on timescales accessible to human observation, as many insect species complete multiple generations each year and respond to environmental pressures with genetic changes that can be documented within individual research careers. The study of insect adaptation provides insights into evolution in action, revealing the mechanisms by which natural selection shapes form and behavior in response to changing conditions. The relationship between Blathers and the insect collection represents one of the most charmingly complex aspects of his curatorial duties, as his professional dedication to comprehensive natural history documentation conflicts with deeply ingrained phobias that make close encounters with living specimens genuinely challenging. Yet his commitment to scientific accuracy and educational completeness ensures that the insect displays maintain the same high standards of presentation and interpretation found throughout the rest of the museum. This personal struggle with his own fears while maintaining professional excellence demonstrates the kind of dedication that characterizes true scholarship, showing that meaningful contributions to knowledge often require individuals to push beyond their comfort zones and confront aspects of the natural world that challenge their personal preferences and inclinations. The result is a collection that serves both as testament to insect diversity and as reminder that understanding often requires us to embrace what initially seems alien or uncomfortable. In the quiet moments when the insect galleries rest in peaceful darkness, these tiny ambassadors from the arthropod world continue their eternal stillness, their preserved forms carrying messages about resilience, adaptation, and the incredible creativity that emerges when millions of years of evolution meet the challenges of survival in an ever-changing world. In the deepest corners of the museum, where the lighting takes on the blue-green hues of filtered sunlight, and the sound of gentle water circulation creates a constant whisper of aquatic life, lies a collection that speaks of mysteries hidden beneath the surface of every body of water that graces our island home. The aquatic winghouses specimens that represent the vast majority of life on Earth, creatures that inhabit realms where pressure, temperature, and light follow entirely different rules than those governing the terrestrial world most visitors know and understand. The ocean specimens displayed here carry within their preserved forms the stories of evolutionary experiments that began in primordial seas billions of years ago, when the first complex molecules learned to replicate themselves and the boundary between living and non-living matter first began to blur. These waters, which cover more than 70% of our planet's surface, contain ecosystems of such complexity and beauty that human language struggles to capture their essence, while harboring creatures whose very existence challenges our assumptions about what forms life can take. The great tunas suspended in their display tanks, their streamlined bodies frozen in eternal motion, represent the perfection of aquatic design refined across millions of years of evolution. Every curve of their fusiform shape, every placement of their fins, every aspect of their muscular and circulatory systems has been optimized for speed and efficiency in the three-dimensional environment of open ocean waters. Their bodies are living torpedoes, capable of crossing entire ocean basins in pursuit of prey or favorable environmental conditions. The internal anatomy of these magnificent fish reveals engineering solutions that human technology has only recently begun to understand and appreciate. Their circulatory systems include counter-current heat exchangers that maintain core body temperature above that of surrounding water, allowing them to remain active in temperatures that would slow other fish to near immobility. Their muscle fibers are arranged in patterns that maximize power output while minimizing energy expenditure, creating propulsion systems that achieve efficiencies no human-designed vessel can match. The seasonal migrations undertaken by these pelagic wanderers connect feeding grounds separated by thousands of miles. Their navigation systems incorporating magnetic field detection, celestial positioning, and chemical gradient recognition in ways that create internal maps of oceanic features invisible to human senses. Individual tuna, tagged in one ocean, have been recovered years later in completely different bodies of water, their journeys tracing routes across abyssal depths and along continental margins that suggest knowledge of currents, temperatures, and food distributions on a planetary scale. The deep-sea specimens housed in specially pressurized containers speak of worlds that exist in perpetual darkness, where the weight of overlying water creates pressures that would instantly crush any surface-dwelling creature. These abyssal inhabitants have evolved in isolation so complete that many species represent evolutionary lineages that have developed independently for millions of years, their forms so alien that they seem to belong more to science fiction than natural history. The anglerfish, with their bioluminescent lures and massive jaws lined with needle-sharp teeth, embody the harsh realities of life in the deep ocean, where every encounter with another organism might represent either a meal or mortal danger. The females of these species grow to substantial size, while their males remain tiny parasitic partners, their bodies fusing permanently with their mates in one of nature's most extreme examples of sexual dimorphism and reproductive specialization. The light-producing organs that many deep-sea creatures carry serve multiple functions beyond simple prey attraction, creating communication systems that operate in the eternal darkness through patterns of flashes, glows, and color changes that convey information about species identity, reproductive status, and territorial boundaries. Some species have evolved the ability to produce different colors of light from different parts of their bodies, creating complex visual displays that rival any terrestrial bioluminescent organism. The pressure adaptations that allow these creatures to survive at depths where the weight of water above them equals hundreds of times atmospheric pressure represent some of the most remarkable physiological solutions found anywhere in the vast living world. Their proteins are stabilized by molecular modifications that prevent denaturation under extreme pressure, while their gas-filled organs either disappear entirely or are replaced by specialized structures that maintain function despite compression forces that would destroy conventional swim bladders. The coral specimens, both living and preserved, reveal one of nature's most successful partnerships, as tiny polyps work in cooperation with symbiotic algae to create limestone structures of incredible beauty and complexity. These colonial organisms demonstrate how individual animals can subordinate their independence to collective purpose, creating superorganisms that function as single units, while maintaining the genetic diversity of their component parts. The incredible diversity of coral forms reflects millions of years of adaptation to different environmental conditions, with species developing growth patterns, feeding strategies, and reproductive cycles, optimized for specific combinations of light levels, water temperature, wave action, and nutrient availability. The branching corals create three-dimensional structures that provide habitat for countless other species, while massive brain corals build foundations that can support entire reef ecosystems for centuries. The symbiotic relationship between corals and their algae partners represents one of the most intimate mutualisms found in nature, with the algae providing energy through photosynthesis, while the coral polyps offer protection and nutrients essential for algal growth. This partnership allows coral reefs to thrive in tropical waters that are paradoxically low in dissolved nutrients, their efficiency in recycling and concentrating resources creating oases of productivity in oceanic deserts. The fish species that inhabit coral reef environments display adaptations for life in one of the most competitive and diverse ecosystems on Earth. Their colors, body shapes, and behavioral patterns reflecting the specific ecological niches they exploit within the complex architecture of the reef community. The parrotfish, with their beak-like mouths adapted for scraping algae from coral surfaces, play crucial roles in maintaining reef health, while creating the white sand beaches that ring tropical islands through their constant production of pulverized coral limestone. The cleaner fish stations that operate throughout reef systems demonstrate sophisticated forms of interspecific cooperation, as certain small fish species specialize in removing parasites and dead tissue from larger clients who line up patiently for their services. These cleaning relationships involve complex behavioral signals and mutual recognition systems that allow predators and prey to interact peacefully in situations where one might normally consume the other. The seasonal spawning aggregations that bring together massive numbers of reef fish at specific times and locations represent some of the most spectacular wildlife phenomena in the marine world, as thousands of individuals coordinate their reproductive timing to maximize the survival chances of their offspring. These events often coincide with lunar cycles, tidal patterns, and seasonal temperature changes in ways that suggest awareness of environmental cues operating on multiple temporal scales. The specimens from temperate coastal waters tell different stories of adaptation to environments that change dramatically with the seasons, as organisms must cope with variations in temperature, salinity, and food availability that would challenge the survival of their tropical relatives. The salmon family, represented by several preserved specimens, demonstrates the remarkable ability to transition between freshwater and marine environments, their physiology undergoing complete reorganization as they move between ecosystems with fundamentally different chemical compositions. The anadromous life cycle of salmon species creates connections between marine and freshwater ecosystems that span hundreds of miles and multiple years, as nutrients accumulated during oceanic feeding phases are transported to inland watersheds through the bodies of returning spawners. These migrations represent one of nature's most important mechanisms for transferring marine productivity to terrestrial and freshwater environments, their ecological significance extending far beyond the fish themselves. The homing abilities, demonstrated by salmon returning to their natal streams, involve navigation systems of extraordinary precision, as fish that have spent years in the open ocean return to specific gravel beds where they were born, guided by chemical memories of water chemistry patterns that remain constant across decades. The accuracy of this navigation surpasses anything achieved by human technology, with success rates that suggest access to information sources and processing capabilities we do not fully understand. The deep water fishing specimens reveal creatures that inhabit the twilight zone between surface waters illuminated by sunlight and the abyssal depths shrouded in perpetual darkness. These species often display remarkable vertical migration patterns, rising toward the surface during nighttime hours to feed in waters rich with plankton, then descending to deeper waters during daylight hours to avoid predators and reduce metabolic demands. The lanternfish, despite their small size, represent one of the most abundant groups of vertebrates on Earth, their biomass exceeding that of all human beings combined, while remaining largely invisible to surface observers. Their bioluminescent organs create patterns unique to each species, allowing individuals to recognize potential mates and schooling partners in the dim twilight zone waters where visual communication becomes increasingly challenging. The giant squid specimens, among the most mysterious and fascinating creatures in the museum's collection, represent our planet's largest invertebrates and embody the incredible potential for size and complexity that cephalopod body plans can achieve. These deep-sea giants, rarely seen alive by human observers, demonstrate intelligence and behavioral sophistication that rivals that of marine mammals. Their problem-solving abilities and learning capacity challenging traditional assumptions about invertebrate cognition. The massive eyes of giant squid, larger than dinner plates, are optimized for gathering the faintest traces of light in the dim depths where they hunt, their visual acuity allowing them to detect the silhouettes of prey or predators against the faint downwelling illumination from far above. The complexity of their visual processing capabilities, inferred from brain structure and behavioral observations, suggests perceptual worlds as rich and detailed as those experienced by any vertebrate. The tentacles of these remarkable creatures are equipped with thousands of suction cups, each one controlled by independent, muscular, and nervous systems that allow manipulation of objects with precision that would challenge the most sophisticated robotic systems. The hooks and teeth found on the tentacles of some species provide gripping power sufficient to hold struggling prey many times the squid's own weight, while their rapid strike capabilities allow them to capture fast-moving fish and other cephalopods. The specimens from polar waters represent adaptations to some of the most extreme environments found in Earth's oceans, where temperatures remain near freezing year-round and seasonal variations in daylight range from continuous darkness to continuous illumination. The antifreeze proteins found in Arctic and Antarctic fish prevent ice crystal formation in their body fluids, allowing them to remain active in waters that would freeze the blood of temperate species. The enormous size, achieved by some polar marine organisms, from giant isopods to colossal tube worms, demonstrates how cold water environments can support metabolisms and body plans impossible in warmer seas. The slow growth rates and extreme longevity of these species create populations with generation times measured in decades or centuries, their life histories unfolding on temporal scales that dwarf those of most terrestrial organisms. The specimens collected from hydrothermal vent communities reveal ecosystems that operate independently of solar energy, their primary productivity based on chemosynthetic bacteria that derive energy from volcanic chemicals rather than photosynthesis. These deep-sea oases support unique assemblages of organisms found nowhere else on Earth, their evolution proceeding in isolation so complete that many species represent entirely new branches on the tree of life. The tube worms that dominate these vent communities lack digestive systems entirely, instead housing symbiotic bacteria within specialized organs that provide all necessary nutrients through chemical processes. These partnerships represent some of the most extreme examples of mutualism found in nature, with neither partner capable of independent survival, while together they thrive in environments toxic to most other forms of life. The seasonal exhibitions in the aquatic wing often focus on the migration patterns and life cycle events that connect distant marine ecosystems, demonstrating how individual organisms serve as links in chains of energy and nutrient transfer that span entire ocean basins. The tracking data from tagged specimens reveals movement patterns of such complexity and scale that they challenge our understanding of how aquatic organisms navigate and orient themselves in the seemingly featureless environment of open water. The educational programs built around the aquatic collection emphasize the connections between marine ecosystems and terrestrial environments, showing how ocean currents, weather patterns, and nutrient cycles create global systems that affect every aspect of life on Earth. The water that falls as rain on the island, the climate that determines growing seasons, and even the composition of soils all reflect processes that begin in distant oceans and connect our local environment to planetary systems of incredible scope and complexity. The conservation messages woven throughout the aquatic displays highlight the vulnerability of marine ecosystems to human activities, from overfishing and pollution to climate change and ocean acidification. The specimens serve not just as representatives of marine biodiversity, but as ambassadors for ecosystems under increasing pressure from anthropogenic changes that threaten to disrupt ecological relationships millions of years in the making. The research facilities connected to the aquatic wing maintain ongoing studies of local marine communities, their monitoring programs documenting changes in species composition, abundance, and distribution that reflect both natural variation and human impacts. The data collected through these efforts contributes to regional and global databases that inform conservation strategies and management decisions affecting marine protected areas and fisheries regulations. The aquatic collection ultimately serves as a window into the largest habitat on our planet, revealing the incredible diversity and complexity of life forms that inhabit realms most terrestrial organisms, including humans, can visit only as temporary guests equipped with artificial life support systems. These specimens remind us that our terrestrial perspective represents only a tiny fraction of the biosphere's total diversity, and that the future of life on Earth depends largely on the health of ecosystems we rarely see but cannot survive without. In the gentle currents that circulate through the display tanks, carrying dissolved oxygen and nutrients to the few living specimens housed within the museum's walls, these aquatic ambassadors continue their eternal vigil, their preserved forms bearing witness to the incredible creativity and resilience of life in Earth's vast waters. From the shallowest tide pools to the deepest abyssal plains where sunlight never penetrates and pressure creates landscapes of the imagination. In the hushed galleries where shadows dance between masterpieces and whispered conversations echo through chambers dedicated to humanity's greatest artistic achievements, there exists a world of mystery and intrigue that extends far beyond the simple appreciation of beauty and craftsmanship. The art wing of the museum serves as more than a repository of cultural treasures. It functions as a crossroads where legitimate scholarship meets the shadowy networks of collectors, dealers, and connoisseurs whose activities shape the international art market in ways that most visitors never suspect or understand. The paintings that hang in carefully controlled environments, their surfaces protected by specialized lighting and climate systems that preserve pigments and canvas for future generations, represent not just individual works of artistic genius, but complex webs of provenance, authentication, and cultural significance that connect them to historical events, political movements, and economic forces spanning centuries of human civilization. Each brushstroke carries within it not only the artist's vision, but the accumulated history of everyone who has owned, studied, or influenced its journey, from studio to museum wall. Red's mysterious appearances at the museum, arriving unannounced with his collection of artworks that range from unquestionable masterpieces to clever forgeries, illuminate the complex ecosystem that surrounds the acquisition and authentication of cultural artifacts. His knowledge of art history, combined with his questionable ethics and his connections to sources that remain deliberately obscure, makes him a fascinating and problematic figure whose activities reveal the tensions between legitimate scholarship and the profitable trade in objects, whose cultural value often exceeds their monetary worth. The authentication process that determines whether a particular work represents a genuine creation by a recognized master or a skillful imitation crafted by someone seeking to profit from confusion, involves far more than simple visual comparison with known examples. Modern art historians employ scientific techniques that can analyze paint composition, canvas weaving patterns, brush hair identification, and even microscopic evidence of aging processes to build comprehensive profiles of individual works that either support or contradict their attributed authorship. The forgeries that occasionally infiltrate the museum's collection, despite the careful screening processes employed by Blathers and his staff, represent a shadow art form in their own right, created by individuals whose technical skills often rival those of the masters they imitate. The motivation behind such deceptions ranges from simple financial gain to complex psychological drives involving recognition, revenge, or the desire to test the limits of expert knowledge and institutional authority. The most sophisticated forgeries require not just artistic skill but deep historical knowledge, as successful deceptions must incorporate not only the visual characteristics of a particular artist's style, but also the materials, techniques, and aging patterns consistent with the claimed period of creation. The forger must become archaeologist, chemist, and art historian simultaneously, their research often surpassing that of legitimate scholars in its thoroughness and attention to detail. The genuine masterpieces housed within the museum's collection carry within their painted surfaces the actual physical traces of their creator's presence, the literal touch of hands that shaped world culture through their creative vision. The oil paintings reveal, under careful examination, the artist's working methods, their corrections and revisions, their experiments with color and composition that capture not just the final result, but the creative process itself frozen in time. The famous portrait that dominates one wall of the main gallery demonstrates the incredible technical mastery achieved by painters who understood light, shadow, and human anatomy with scientific precision, while possessing the artistic sensitivity to transform mere representation into emotional communication that transcends the boundaries of time and culture. The subject's eyes seem to follow viewers as they move through the space, an optical illusion created through the artist's understanding of perspective and human visual perception that remains as effective today as when the paint was still wet. The landscape paintings reveal not just artistic interpretation of natural beauty, but historical documentation of environments that may have changed dramatically since the artist's brush captured their essential characteristics. These works serve as windows into past climates, vegetation patterns, and human modifications of natural landscapes, their value as historical records often equaling their aesthetic significance for contemporary viewers seeking to understand how previous generations perceived and interacted with their environments. The still life compositions, with their careful arrangements of fruits, flowers, books, and symbolic objects, demonstrate the artist's ability to transform mundane materials into profound statements about mortality, beauty, and the passage of time. The techniques used to render different textures, the translucency of grape skin, the roughness of woven fabric, the gleaming surface of metal objects require not just observational skill, but deep understanding of how light interacts with various materials to create the visual information our minds interpret as three-dimensional reality. The provenance research that traces each artwork's ownership history often reveals stories as compelling as the images themselves, documenting their journeys through private collections, public institutions, wartime relocations, and changing aesthetic preferences that have elevated or diminished their cultural status across the centuries. Some works have survived multiple attempts at destruction, while others have been lost and rediscovered multiple times, their disappearances and reappearances creating gaps in the historical record that researchers work diligently to fill. The conservation work required to maintain these cultural treasures involves ongoing battles against the inevitable processes of physical decay that affect all organic materials over time. Paint layers crack and separate, canvas fibers weaken and distort, varnishes yellow and obscure original colors, while environmental factors such as humidity fluctuations, light exposure, and air pollution accelerate deterioration processes that conservators must constantly monitor and address. The ethical questions surrounding art collection and display reflect broader issues about cultural ownership, historical justice, and the responsibilities of institutions that serve as guardians of humanity's creative heritage. Many works in the museum's collection were created in cultural contexts very different from the contemporary museum environment, their original purposes and meanings potentially altered by their transformation from functional objects into aesthetic artifacts removed from their intended social and spiritual contexts. The educational programs built around the art collection emphasize not just appreciation of individual masterpieces, but understanding of the cultural forces that shaped their creation, the technological innovations that made various artistic techniques possible, and the social networks that connected artists across geographic and temporal boundaries. These programs often reveal unexpected connections between artistic movements and contemporary scientific discoveries, political events, and economic conditions that influenced both the content and style of creative works. The temporary exhibitions that rotate through the gallery spaces allow the museum to display works on loan from other institutions, creating opportunities for visitors to experience masterpieces that would otherwise require extensive travel to encounter. These special exhibitions often focus on particular themes, time periods, or artistic movements, their careful curation revealing relationships and influences that become apparent only when related works are displayed in proximity to each other. The lighting systems employed throughout the art wing represent sophisticated compromises between the need to illuminate artworks effectively for viewing and the requirement to protect light-sensitive materials from damage caused by excessive exposure to ultraviolet radiation and visible light. The carefully calibrated illumination levels, combined with automated systems that adjust intensity based on occupancy patterns and ambient light conditions, extend the lifespan of vulnerable works while ensuring optimal viewing conditions for museum visitors. The security measures protecting the art collection operate on multiple levels, from obvious elements like protective cases and surveillance cameras to subtle environmental monitoring systems that detect unauthorized movement, temperature changes, or other anomalies that might indicate attempted theft or vandalism. The discreet nature of these protective systems reflects the museum's commitment to creating viewing environments that feel open and welcoming while maintaining the highest standards of collection security. The research library associated with the art wing houses specialized collections of books, periodicals, and archival materials that support ongoing scholarship in art history, conservation, science, and museum studies. These resources, available to qualified researchers from around the world, facilitate investigations into attribution questions, historical contexts, and conservation challenges that contribute to the broader understanding of artistic heritage and its preservation for future generations. The digital documentation projects that create high-resolution photographic records of the collection serve multiple purposes, from supporting research activities and educational programs to providing backup documentation that could aid in recovery efforts should original works be lost or damaged. These digital archives also enable virtual exhibitions and online educational resources that extend the museum's reach far beyond its physical boundaries. The relationships between the museum and contemporary artists reflect ongoing dialogues between historical tradition and current creative practice, as living artists draw inspiration from masterpieces of the past while contributing new works that will themselves become part of the cultural heritage preserved for future generations. These connections demonstrate the continuity of artistic tradition, while acknowledging the ways in which contemporary perspectives and techniques can illuminate new aspects of historical works. The art market dynamics that influence acquisition decisions require museum staff to navigate complex negotiations involving not just financial considerations but questions of authenticity, legal ownership, cultural significance, and institutional mission. The competition between museums, private collectors, and commercial galleries for access to important works creates market pressures that can drive prices beyond the reach of educational institutions, while simultaneously generating resources that fund conservation work and scholarly research. The interdisciplinary collaboration required for effective art museum management brings together expertise from fields ranging from chemistry and physics to history and anthropology, creating research environments where scientific analysis informs humanistic interpretation while cultural understanding guides technical conservation work. These partnerships often produce insights that transform understanding of artistic techniques, historical contexts, or conservation requirements in ways that benefit the entire museum community. The public programming associated with the art collection extends beyond traditional guided tours and lectures to include hands-on workshops, artist demonstrations, and interactive experiences that help visitors understand artistic processes and develop their own creative abilities. These programs recognize that appreciation of artistic achievement often grows from personal experience with creative challenges and technical demands similar to those faced by the masters whose works fill the gallery walls. The art wing serves ultimately as more than a showcase for individual masterpieces. It functions as a laboratory for understanding human creativity, cultural transmission, and the processes by which societies preserve and transmit their most valued expressions of beauty, meaning, and identity across generations. In the quiet moments when the galleries rest in gentle twilight and the masterpieces maintain their eternal vigil, these cultural ambassadors continue their silent dialogue with eternity, their painted surfaces bearing witness to the enduring human need to create meaning through beauty and to preserve that meaning for souls yet unborn. In the highest reaches of the museum, where curved glass domes frame the infinite depths of night sky, and specialized instruments track the movements of celestial bodies across their eternal paths, Celeste maintains her quiet vigil over mysteries that dwarf all earthbound concerns in their scope and grandeur. The observatory wing serves as humanity's window into the cosmos, a place where the boundary between scientific observation and spiritual contemplation dissolves in the face of revelations too vast for ordinary comprehension to fully embrace. The star charts that cover the walls of the astronomical library represent thousands of years of patient observation, their carefully plotted positions documenting the slow dance of constellations as they wheel across the heavens in cycles that span human lifetimes, civilizations, and geological epochs. These maps serve not merely as navigational aids but as calendars written in light, their seasonal progressions marking the passage of time in ways that connect earthbound observers to cosmic rhythms that govern everything from ocean tides to the internal clocks that regulate biological processes in every living creature. The ancient wisdom preserved in these celestial records speaks of connections between heaven and earth that modern science is only beginning to understand. As researchers discover how solar radiation cycles influence climate patterns, how lunar gravitational effects shape the behavior of countless species, and how the very elements that compose our bodies were forged in the nuclear furnaces of dying stars, whose light still reaches us across unimaginable distances of space and time. Celeste's profound understanding of astronomical phenomena extends far beyond mere technical knowledge to encompass the deeper meanings that emerge when scientific observation meets philosophical reflection. Her ability to predict meteor showers, eclipses, and planetary alignments demonstrates not just computational skill, but intuitive grasp of the cosmic patterns that govern celestial mechanics, her predictions carrying within them awareness of how these grand events influence the subtle energies that flow through all natural systems. The telescope that dominates the observatory's central chamber represents centuries of technological development, its precisely ground lenses and mirrors gathering starlight that began its journey toward Earth when our planet was young and life itself was still experimenting with the basic biochemical processes that would eventually produce consciousness capable of contemplating its own cosmic origins. Through this instrument, observers can witness events occurring at distances so vast that the very concept of simultaneity becomes meaningless, their observations documenting the universe as it existed in various stages of its evolutionary development. The meteor showers that periodically illuminate the night sky with their brief but spectacular displays of celestial fire represent encounters with the debris fields left behind by ancient comets, their icy nuclei having spent millennia in the cold darkness beyond the outer planets before gravitational perturbations sent them spiraling inward toward the sun. As these cosmic wanderers approach our star, solar radiation vaporizes their frozen surfaces, creating the glowing tails that have inspired wonder and superstition throughout human history. The fragments that survive their fiery passage through Earth's atmosphere to reach the surface as meteorites carry within their mineral structures direct samples of the early solar system, their composition revealing details about the processes that transformed a rotating disk of gas and dust into the complex array of planets, moons, and smaller bodies that populate our cosmic neighborhood today. The analysis of these extraterrestrial visitors provides insights into stellar evolution, planetary formation, and the distribution of elements throughout the galaxy that complement observations made through even the most powerful telescopes. The constellation patterns that shift slowly across the night sky throughout the year serve as natural timekeepers, their predictable movements creating a celestial calendar that enabled ancient civilizations to plan agricultural activities, religious ceremonies, and navigation expeditions with remarkable precision. The stories woven around these star groupings reflect humanity's deep need to find meaning and pattern in the apparent chaos of the natural world, their mythological narratives preserving cultural wisdom about seasonal cycles, human psychology, and the relationship between earthbound existence and cosmic order. The zodiacal constellations that mark the sun's apparent path through the heavens during the course of a year demonstrate how astronomical observation and cultural interpretation become intertwined in systems of meaning that influence human behavior across multiple generations. The timing of births, the planning of important events, and the interpretation of natural phenomena have all been influenced by beliefs about celestial influences that persist despite centuries of scientific advancement and rational skepticism. The seasonal astronomy that governs the timing of various celestial events reflects the complex gravitational interactions between Earth, Moon, Sun, and planets as they pursue their orbital paths through space at velocities that would challenge human comprehension if experienced directly. The elliptical nature of these orbits creates variations in celestial timing that require careful calculation and long-term observation to predict accurately, their precise mathematical relationships revealing the elegant simplicity of physical laws that govern systems of overwhelming complexity. The aurora displays that occasionally illuminate the night sky with curtains of colored light demonstrate the interaction between solar particle emissions and Earth's magnetic field. their ethereal beauty masking violent processes occurring in the upper atmosphere, as charged particles from space collide with atmospheric gases at altitudes, where the boundary between planet and cosmos becomes increasingly difficult to define. These phenomena connect terrestrial observers directly to solar activity occurring 93 million miles away, their intensity and frequency reflecting the variable output of fusion reactions in the Sun's core. The lunar cycles that govern ocean tides and influence the behavior of countless nocturnal species represent one of the most obvious connections between celestial mechanics and earthbound natural processes. Their monthly rhythm, creating patterns of opportunity and constraint that have shaped the evolution of coastal ecosystems and the creatures that inhabit them. The gravitational effects responsible for these tidal patterns demonstrate how objects separated by vast distances can influence each other through forces that operate across the vacuum of space with mathematical precision. The deep sky objects visible through the observatory's telescope reveal the incredible diversity of stellar evolution and galactic structure, their varied forms representing different stages in the life cycles of stars, and the gravitational architectures that organize matter on cosmic scales. The nebulae that glow with the light of newly forming stars, the clusters that contain some of the oldest objects in the universe, and the distant galaxies, whose light carries information about cosmic conditions billions of years ago, all contribute to humanity's growing understanding of its place within the larger cosmic context. The star formation regions, where new suns condense from clouds of gas and dust, demonstrate the ongoing creative processes that continue to generate new sources of light and energy throughout the universe, their stellar nurseries producing the heavy elements essential for planetary formation and the eventual emergence of complex chemistry capable of supporting living systems. The life cycle of these stellar objects, from initial collapse through main sequence burning to eventual death as white dwarfs, neutron stars, or black holes, reveals the cosmic recycling processes that have made possible the existence of Earth and everything upon it. The variable stars whose brightness changes over predictable periods serve as cosmic lighthouses, their pulsations providing standard candles that enable astronomers to measure distances across intergalactic space, while simultaneously revealing details about stellar structure and evolution that complement theoretical models of how stars function. The careful monitoring of these stellar variables requires patience and precision that spans human generations. Their long-term observation programs, creating databases that support research into cosmic evolution and the fundamental physics that governs stellar behavior. The planetary observations conducted through the observatory reveal worlds whose diversity challenges every assumption about what kinds of environments might exist elsewhere in the universe. Their varied compositions, atmospheric conditions, and orbital characteristics suggesting that planetary formation produces outcomes far more varied than early theories predicted. The detailed study of these neighboring worlds provides insights into Earth's own evolutionary history, while offering tantalizing hints about the possibilities for life in other stellar systems. The comet observations that document these ancient visitors during their periodic returns to the inner solar system reveal objects whose compositions preserve samples of the primordial materials from which planets formed, their spectacular displays serving as reminders of the violent processes that shaped the early solar system and continue to influence planetary evolution through impacts, gravitational perturbations, and the delivery of volatile compounds essential for atmospheric and oceanic development. The eclipse predictions that allow observers to witness the precise alignment of celestial bodies demonstrate the mathematical elegance underlying orbital mechanics, their rare occurrence, creating opportunities for scientific observation and spiritual reflection. that have influenced human culture throughout recorded history. The total solar eclipses that temporarily transform day into night reveal the sun's corona and create conditions for astronomical observations impossible under normal circumstances, while lunar eclipses display the shadow of Earth projected onto the moon's surface in demonstrations of cosmic geometry visible to naked eye observers. The meteor radiants that mark the apparent origin points of shooting star displays reveal the orbital paths of ancient comets whose debris fields Earth encounters during its annual journey around the Sun. Their predictable timing, creating celestial fireworks, shows that connect contemporary observers to cosmic events that occurred when the solar system was young, and the processes that created modern planetary configurations were still actively reshaping the architecture of our cosmic neighborhood. The star formation and destruction processes documented through telescopic observation reveal the cosmic recycling that has made possible the existence of rocky planets and the complex chemistry essential for biological evolution, their violent beauty demonstrating how stellar death becomes stellar birth in cycles that have continued for billions of years and will continue for billions more. The heavy elements produced in stellar cores and distributed through space by supernovae explosions provide the raw materials from which terrestrial worlds and living organisms are constructed, creating direct physical connections between Earth-based observers and the most distant objects visible in the night sky. The galactic rotation that slowly changes the positions of stars relative to each other operates on timescales so vast that human civilizations rise and fall in moments relative to the cosmic processes that govern stellar motion. Yet careful observation reveals these changes and documents humanity's participation in cosmic evolution that extends from subatomic particles to the largest structures visible in the observable universe. The measurement of stellar parallax and proper motion provides direct evidence of Earth's orbital motion and the Sun's movement through the galaxy, connecting terrestrial observers to cosmic dynamics that dwarf all Earthbound concerns in their scope and duration. The citizen science programs that engage amateur astronomers in systematic observation of variable stars, planetary positions, and transient phenomena demonstrate how scientific understanding advances through the collaborative efforts of professional researchers and dedicated volunteers whose patience and persistence contribute essential data to ongoing investigations of cosmic phenomena that require monitoring over extended periods of time. The seasonal programs that connect astronomical events to terrestrial celebrations and agricultural cycles reveal how human culture has always been influenced by cosmic rhythms, their traditional observances preserving ancient wisdom about the connections between celestial timing and earthbound activities that remain relevant despite technological changes that have apparently disconnected modern life from natural cycles. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the observatory rests in peaceful darkness and the instruments track celestial objects across their appointed paths, these cosmic ambassadors continue their eternal dance through space and time, their light carrying messages about the fundamental nature of existence itself, the physical laws that govern all natural phenomena, and humanity's place within a universe whose beauty and complexity exceed the capacity of any single mind to fully comprehend, yet inspire wonder and humility in all who take time to contemplate the magnificent cosmic theatre in which the brief drama of terrestrial life unfolds against a backdrop of infinite mystery and eternal change. When the last visitor departs and the heavy doors seal the museum from the outside world, when the educational tours conclude and the guided conversations fade into memory, a different kind of existence begins within these hallowed halls where knowledge rests in eternal vigil. The museum after hours transforms into a realm where the boundaries between preservation and living presence blur in ways that daylight visitors never suspect, where the collected wisdom of ages stirs with subtle energies that respond to the deep silence and profound stillness that descends with darkness. The nocturnal staff who tend to the museum's needs during these quiet hours move through the galleries with the reverent care of temple keepers, their soft footsteps echoing through corridors where every surface holds treasures that represent millennia of natural history and human cultural achievement. These dedicated guardians understand that their work extends far beyond simple maintenance and security. They serve as intermediaries between the sleeping world outside and the eternal wakefulness that characterizes institutions dedicated to preserving the memory of life itself. Blathers himself often remains long after official closing hours, his natural nocturnal inclinations aligning perfectly with the contemplative atmosphere that emerges when artificial lighting dims, and the museum settles into the rhythms that govern all places where time moves with the patience of geological ages. During these solitary hours, he conducts the detailed curatorial work that requires uninterrupted concentration, his careful examination of specimens and artifacts, revealing details that escaped notice during the bustle of daytime operations. The cleaning rituals that maintain the pristine condition of display cases and preservation environments take on an almost ceremonial quality in the darkened galleries, each careful movement of cloth against glass serving not merely functional purposes but expressing the deep respect that proper stewardship demands. The specialized equipment used to maintain optimal temperature and humidity levels operates with whispered efficiency, its monitoring systems recording minute environmental changes that could affect the longevity of irreplaceable specimens. The fossil wing assumes an entirely different character when darkness falls, and the ancient bones rest in the profound silence they have known for millions of years. The great skeletons seem to breathe with the slow rhythm of eons, their shadowy forms suggesting the magnificent creatures they once supported in ecosystems that vanished long before human consciousness emerged to contemplate their significance. The play of security lighting across fossilized surfaces creates patterns that seem to shift and dance, as if the preserved remains retain some memory of movement from their distant past. In these quiet hours, the preparation work that slowly reveals hidden details in newly acquired specimens continues under carefully focused illumination. The patient scraping and brushing that removes centuries of accumulated sediment proceeding with the methodical precision of archaeological excavation. The tools used for this delicate work, dental picks, fine brushes, pneumatic devices that remove material grain by grain, become instruments of revelation, gradually exposing details that will contribute to humanity's understanding of life's evolutionary history. The insect collection assumes an almost mystical quality when viewed by the gentle illumination of conservation lighting. The countless specimens arranged in their display cases, creating patterns that suggest the incredible diversity of forms that evolution has explored in its endless experimentation with the arthropod body plan. The preserved butterflies seem to flutter in response to air currents created by the ventilation systems, while the mounted beetles reflect available light from their polished wing, covers in ways that create subtle color shifts and optical effects. The nocturnal insects that remain active in the museum's indoor garden spaces continue their natural behaviors in the darkness, their movements creating soft, rustling sounds and brief glimpses of motion that remind human observers of the vast world of activity that proceeds continuously beyond the reach of daylight vision. The moths that navigate by artificial lighting, the beetles that emerge from hidden crevices to explore gallery floors, and the countless smaller arthropods that maintain their ecological relationships even within museum walls, demonstrate how life adapts to and colonizes even the most carefully controlled environments. The aquatic displays take on ethereal beauty when illuminated only by the gentle, blue-green lighting that maintains proper conditions for the few living specimens housed within the museum's walls. The preserved fish suspended in their display media seem to swim through liquid darkness, while the coral specimens glow with bioluminescent-like radiance that suggests the living reefs from which they were carefully collected. The sound of water circulation systems creates a constant whispered accompaniment to nocturnal activities, their mechanical rhythms mimicking the eternal pulse of ocean currents and tidal flows. The art galleries assume profound solemnity when viewed under the minimal illumination required to protect light-sensitive pigments and materials from degradation, their masterpieces maintaining silent dialogues with eternity, while conservation monitors record environmental conditions with scientific precision. The paintings seem to emerge from and recede into shadow in ways that emphasize different aspects of their composition, their subjects appearing to shift positions slightly as changing light angles reveal details invisible under standard viewing conditions. The hidden storage areas that house specimens and artifacts not currently on public display contain treasures that equal or exceed those in the exhibition galleries, their carefully catalogued collections representing decades of systematic accumulation and preservation work. These climate-controlled chambers maintain optimal conditions for materials ranging from delicate organic specimens to robust mineral samples, their organization systems allowing researchers to locate specific items from collections that number in the tens of thousands of individual pieces. The research laboratories associated with various museum departments continue their work around the clock, automated equipment conducting analyses that require extended processing times, while specialized storage systems maintain samples under conditions that preserve their integrity for future investigation. The chemical processes used to stabilize organic materials, the imaging systems that document specimens in minute detail, and the computational resources that support database management and research activities all operate continuously to support the museum's educational and scientific missions. The library collections that support museum research contain volumes so rare and valuable that they require the same level of environmental control and security monitoring applied to exhibition specimens, their pages preserving knowledge that exists nowhere else in the world while providing essential resources for scholars investigating questions that span multiple disciplines and centuries of accumulated understanding. The climate-controlled storage systems that house these materials maintain precise temperature and humidity conditions while protecting against fire, flood, and other disasters that could destroy irreplaceable intellectual resources. The conservation workshops where damaged specimens receive careful restoration and repair operate according to schedules that often extend far beyond normal working hours, their specialized equipment and expert staff addressing problems that threaten the long-term survival of museum collections. The microscopes used to examine deterioration at cellular levels, the chemical baths that stabilize fragile materials, and the precision tools that enable repairs measured in fractions of millimeters all contribute to preservation work that ensures future generations will inherit collections in better condition than those received from previous custodians. The security systems that protect museum collections operate with vigilance that never relaxes, their sensors and cameras creating overlapping fields of coverage that detect the slightest unauthorized movement while distinguishing between legitimate maintenance activities and potential threats to collection safety. The sophisticated algorithms that govern these protective systems learn to recognize normal patterns of nocturnal activity while alerting human monitors to any anomalies that might indicate attempts at theft or vandalism. The archival storage systems that preserve documentation related to specimen collection provenance research, and scientific analysis contain information that often proves as valuable as the physical specimens themselves. They're carefully organized files, creating research resources that support investigations into everything from taxonomic relationships to historical collecting practices that influence the development of natural history museums worldwide. The educational preparation work that occurs during evening hours involves the development of new interpretive materials, the planning of special exhibitions, and the creation of resources that will enhance visitor understanding of complex scientific concepts. The careful research that supports these activities draws upon the full depth of museum collections and expertise, their resulting programs and displays representing collaborative efforts that bridge the gap between specialized knowledge and public understanding. The building maintenance work that preserves the physical infrastructure housing these irreplaceable collections requires specialized knowledge of conservation requirements and historical preservation techniques, their activities ensuring that temperature control systems, humidity management equipment, and structural elements continue to provide optimal environments for collection storage and display. The careful balance between building preservation and collection conservation creates ongoing challenges that require expertise spanning multiple technical disciplines. The volunteer programs that supplement professional staff activities often extend into evening hours, with dedicated individuals contributing essential services that range from data entry and specimen preparation to educational program development and visitor services support. These volunteers, drawn from backgrounds spanning multiple professions and areas of expertise, often develop deep personal connections to museum collections that transform their contributions from simple civic duty into passionate advocacy for the preservation and interpretation of natural and cultural heritage. The research collaborations that connect museum staff with academic institutions and other cultural organizations often require work schedules that extend across multiple time zones, their international scope creating communication patterns that blur traditional boundaries between day and night operations. The digital resources that support these collaborations enable real-time sharing of collection information, research data, and analytical results that advance understanding of topics spanning multiple disciplines and geographical regions. In the deepest hours of night, when even the nocturnal staff complete their essential tasks and the museum settles into the profound quiet that characterizes institutions dedicated to preservation and memory, the collections themselves seem to emanate a subtle presence that transcends their physical forms. The accumulated wisdom they represent, the countless hours of human dedication they embody, and the eternal questions they pose about existence, beauty, and meaning create an atmosphere that approaches the sacred, transforming the museum from mere repository into a temple dedicated to the endless human quest for understanding and connection with the natural world that sustains and inspires all conscious life. The relationship between the museum and the vibrant ecosystem that flourishes across the island extends far beyond the simple housing of preserved specimens within climate-controlled galleries, creating instead a living dialogue between past and present that influences every aspect of natural life within the island's diverse habitats. The specimens carefully catalogued and displayed within these halls serve not merely as educational artifacts, but as spiritual guardians whose presence somehow attracts their living counterparts to flourish in unprecedented numbers and diversity throughout the island's forests, beaches, rivers, and meadows. This mysterious connection between the preserved and the living manifests in ways that challenge conventional understanding of how museum collections relate to the ecosystems from which they are drawn. The butterfly specimens mounted in their display cases seem to call to their wild relatives, drawing rare species to the island's flower gardens with a consistency that defies statistical probability. Species that should appear only occasionally, if at all, in this particular geographic region arrive during their appropriate seasons, as if following invisible migration routes that lead them directly to habitats where their preserved ancestors rest in eternal stillness. The fossil specimens housed in the museum's paleontology wing appear to influence the island's geology in subtle but measurable ways, with new fossil discoveries occurring at rates far exceeding those documented on neighboring islands with similar geological formations. Beach erosion reveals previously hidden deposits of ancient shells and bones, while construction projects consistently uncover specimens that fill gaps in the museum's collection with an accuracy that suggests some form of communication between the preserved remnants of ancient life and the geological forces that continue to shape the island's landscape. The marine specimens preserved in the aquatic wing create ripple effects that extend throughout the surrounding ocean waters, their presence somehow encouraging the return of species that had been absent from local waters for decades or even centuries. Fish populations that marine biologists had considered locally extinct begin reappearing in coastal surveys, their numbers gradually increasing, as if responding to chemical signals or electromagnetic fields generated by their preserved relatives within the museum's walls. The detailed documentation maintained by museum staff reveals patterns of species occurrence that correlate strongly with the timing of new acquisitions and the seasonal rotation of temporary exhibitions. When rare specimens are added to permanent displays, corresponding increases in sightings of living examples occur within weeks of the installations. Their appearances concentrated in areas of the island that provide optimal habitat conditions for those particular species. The educational programs that bring visitors into direct contact with museum specimens create transformation effects that extend far beyond simple knowledge transfer, with participants reporting heightened sensitivity to natural phenomena and increased ability to locate and identify species during their independent explorations of island habitats. Children who attend regular museum programs demonstrate identification skills that surpass those of adult naturalists with decades of field experience. Their enhanced perceptual abilities, suggesting that exposure to properly curated collections awakens dormant capacities for ecological awareness. The citizen science projects coordinated through the museum engage community members in systematic monitoring of local wildlife populations. Their collective observations, creating databases that document fluctuations in species abundance, distribution, and behavior with unprecedented precision. These volunteer naturalists often credit their museum experiences with providing the foundational knowledge that enables them to contribute meaningful data to ongoing research projects, their participation transforming them from casual observers into dedicated advocates for conservation and environmental protection. The seasonal exhibitions that highlight particular taxonomic groups or ecological relationships coincide with corresponding increases in public awareness and protection of those featured organisms throughout their island habitats. When the museum showcases pollinator relationships through special displays and educational programs, community members report greater attention to butterfly gardens, native plant cultivation, and pesticide reduction practices that benefit local pollinator populations across both public and private lands. The research activities conducted by museum staff create knowledge that directly informs conservation strategies and habitat management decisions throughout the island's protected areas and private nature preserves. The detailed life history information derived from specimen studies provides essential guidance for restoration projects, endangered species recovery programs, and ecosystem management practices that maintain the delicate balance between human development and natural habitat preservation. The collaborative relationships between the museum and local schools, environmental organizations, and government agencies create networks of information sharing and coordinated action that amplify the conservation impact of museum activities far beyond what any single institution could achieve independently. These partnerships leverage the museum's scientific expertise and educational resources to support community-wide initiatives that address everything from invasive species management to climate change adaptation strategies. The volunteer programs that engage community members in collection development activities transform participants into active stewards of natural resources. Their enhanced understanding of proper collecting techniques and specimen documentation, creating a network of trained field assistants who contribute significantly to ongoing survey and monitoring efforts. These volunteer collectors often develop such expertise that their contributions rival those of professional researchers. Their detailed field notes and careful specimen preparation, supporting taxonomic studies and ecological investigations that would otherwise be impossible given normal staffing and budget limitations. The museum's influence on agricultural practices throughout the island demonstrates how proper understanding of ecological relationships can improve both crop production and environmental sustainability, with farmers reporting increased yields and reduced pest problems after participating in educational programs that emphasize beneficial insect identification and habitat enhancement. The integration of scientific knowledge with traditional farming wisdom creates agricultural systems that support both human food security and biodiversity conservation in ways that benefit entire watershed ecosystems. The impact on tourism and economic development reflects the museum's role in creating environmental awareness that attracts visitors specifically interested in experiencing the island's remarkable natural diversity, their presence generating revenue that supports both conservation activities and local communities, while creating economic incentives for habitat protection and species preservation. The reputation for exceptional wildlife viewing opportunities brings researchers, photographers, and nature enthusiasts from around the world, their activities contributing to a sustainable tourism economy based on environmental quality rather than resource extraction. The influence on local legislation and policy development demonstrates how scientifically grounded education can shape democratic decision-making processes that affect environmental protection, with community members who have participated in museum programs showing greater support for conservation measures and more sophisticated understanding of the ecological consequences of development decisions. This informed citizenry creates political pressure for evidence-based environmental policies that balance economic development with ecosystem protection in ways that ensure long-term sustainability. The cultural transformation that occurs as community members develop deeper connections to their natural environment manifests in changes in recreational preferences, residential landscaping choices, and consumer behaviors that collectively create demand for products and services that support rather than degrade ecological systems. The shift from purely extractive relationships with nature toward more cooperative and sustainable approaches reflects the kind of consciousness change that environmental educators have long recognized as essential for addressing global environmental challenges. The artistic and creative inspiration generated by museum experiences influences local cultural production in ways that celebrate and promote environmental awareness, with community members creating visual art, music, literature, and performance works that reflect their enhanced appreciation for natural beauty and ecological complexity. These creative expressions serve as vehicles for sharing environmental knowledge and values with audiences who might not otherwise engage with scientific information. Their emotional and aesthetic appeal, creating pathways for environmental learning that complement more traditional educational approaches. The health and wellness benefits experienced by community members who spend time in the museum and its associated natural areas reflect the profound connections between human well-being and environmental quality. Their documented improvements in mental health, physical fitness, and social connectivity, demonstrating how engagement with natural history collections and living ecosystems contributes to overall quality of life in ways that transcend simple recreation or education. The intergenerational knowledge transfer, facilitated by museum programs, creates lasting changes in family and community relationships with the natural world, as children who develop environmental awareness and identification skills through museum experiences share their knowledge with parents and grandparents, creating household conversations and family activities that strengthen bonds between people and place while building social support for conservation initiatives. The research contributions made possible by the unusual species diversity and abundance that characterizes the island's ecosystems attract scientific investigators from universities and research institutions around the world, their studies advancing understanding of ecological processes, evolutionary relationships, and conservation biology in ways that contribute to global scientific knowledge, while generating prestige and resources that benefit the entire island community. The monitoring programs established to document the ongoing relationship between museum collections and living ecosystems reveal patterns of interaction that challenge conventional boundaries between institutional spaces and natural habitats. Their data suggesting that properly maintained natural history collections may serve functions in ecosystem maintenance and species conservation that extend far beyond their traditional roles in education and research. In the quiet moments when museum visitors pause to contemplate individual specimens, when students discover unexpected connections between preserved artifacts and living creatures, when researchers find answers to questions they had not known how to ask, the living collection continues its work of transformation, its influence spreading like ripples across the surface of a still pond, touching every aspect of island life, with the gentle but persistent power of knowledge shared with wisdom and love for the natural world that sustains all existence. The ethical frameworks that govern the museum's approach to collection development and specimen preservation reflect centuries of evolving thought about humanity's responsibilities toward the natural world and future generations, who will inherit the consequences of contemporary conservation décisions. These philosophical foundations extend far beyond simple questions of what should be collected and how it should be preserved, encompassing fundamental issues about the relationship between human knowledge and natural systems, the balance between scientific investigation and ecological protection, and the moral obligations that arise when institutions assume guardianship over irreplaceable natural and cultural heritage. The decision-making processes that determine which specimens merit preservation within the museum's limited space and resources require careful consideration of multiple competing values, each representing legitimate claims on institutional attention and public support. The scientific value of individual specimens must be weighed against their cultural significance, their educational potential, their conservation importance, and their role in maintaining comprehensive collections that serve multiple constituencies with diverse needs and expectations. The concept of the museum as modern ark reflects ancient traditions of preservation and stewardship that recognize certain institutions as guardians of knowledge and life forms that might otherwise be lost to the forces of change that continuously reshape natural and cultural landscapes. This responsibility extends beyond the simple maintenance of physical specimens to encompass the preservation of the relationships, contexts, and meanings that give individual objects their significance within broader systems of understanding. The genetic diversity preserved within museum collections increasingly serves functions that extend far beyond traditional educational and research purposes, as advances in molecular biology and biotechnology create possibilities for using preserved biological materials to support conservation efforts aimed at maintaining or restoring endangered populations in their natural habitats. The tissues, seeds, and genetic samples maintained under optimal storage conditions may represent the last remaining sources of genetic information for species that face imminent extinction in the wild. The documentation standards that ensure each specimen's scientific and historical value remains accessible to future researchers reflect the understanding that physical preservation alone is insufficient to maintain the full significance of collected materials. The detailed records that accompany each acquisition, documenting collection location, date, circumstances, and associated ecological information, often prove as valuable as the specimens themselves for investigators seeking to understand environmental changes, species, distributions, and ecological relationships across extended time periods. The balance between accessibility and protection creates ongoing tension within museum operations, as the desire to share collections with the broadest possible audience must be reconciled with the need to minimize handling, exposure, and other factors that contribute to specimen deterioration over time. The development of digital documentation, virtual exhibition systems, and remote access technologies offers partial solutions to this dilemma, while creating new challenges related to technological obsolescence and long-term data preservation. The educational philosophy that guides museum interpretation programs reflects deep consideration of how scientific knowledge can be shared effectively with audiences whose backgrounds, interests, and learning preferences span an enormous range of diversity. The challenge of making complex ecological concepts accessible to young children, while maintaining the intellectual rigor required for advanced researchers, demands pedagogical approaches that honor both scientific accuracy and human curiosity in all its varied manifestations. The relationship between local knowledge traditions and institutional scientific practices creates opportunities for collaboration that benefit both professional researchers and community members whose ancestral connections to particular landscapes and species provide insights unavailable through conventional academic methodologies. The integration of indigenous ecological wisdom with museum-based research often reveals aspects of natural systems that purely scientific approaches might overlook, while scientific documentation can help preserve traditional knowledge that might otherwise be lost as communities experience cultural changes. The conservation implications of museum collecting activities require careful consideration of how specimen acquisition affects wild populations, particularly for rare or endangered species whose numbers may be too small to sustain any level of collecting pressure. The development of alternative documentation methods, including photography, acoustic recording, and non-invasive tissue sampling, offers ways to maintain scientific records without removing individuals from populations where every member may be crucial for long-term survival. The temporal perspectives that inform museum conservation planning must accommodate the reality that institutional preservation efforts operate across timescales that exceed individual human lifespans, professional careers, and even organizational continuity. The decisions made today about collection priorities, preservation methods, and resource allocation will influence the research possibilities and educational opportunities available to scholars and students who will not be born for decades or centuries. The international collaboration networks that connect museums around the world create opportunities for sharing expertise, resources, and responsibilities in ways that ensure important collections receive appropriate care regardless of local, economic, or political circumstances. These partnerships often prove essential for maintaining endangered collections during periods of natural disaster, political instability, or economic crisis that threaten individual institutions with closure or neglect. The technological developments that transform museum operations create both opportunities and challenges for long-term preservation goals, as new methods for documentation, analysis, and storage must be evaluated not only for their immediate benefits, but for their long-term sustainability and compatibility with future technological systems. The history of museum collections includes numerous examples of preservation methods that seemed ideal when implemented, but later proved inadequate or even harmful to the specimens they were intended to protect. The public engagement strategies that connect museum collections to contemporary environmental issues demonstrate how historical specimens can inform current conservation efforts while building public support for policies and practices that protect remaining natural habitats. The ability to document environmental changes through comparison of historical and contemporary specimens provides compelling evidence for the reality and significance of human impacts on natural systems. The research ethics that govern how museum specimens are used in scientific investigations reflect evolving standards about appropriate treatment of biological materials, particularly those derived from endangered species or collected from indigenous territories, where community consent and benefit-sharing agreements may be required. The development of these ethical frameworks requires ongoing dialogue between scientific communities and the societies from which specimens are drawn. The financial sustainability challenges that affect museum operations create ongoing pressure to demonstrate public value and justify continued investment in activities whose benefits may not become apparent for generations. The development of economic arguments for museum preservation must balance practical considerations about cost-effectiveness with recognition that some forms of value cannot be measured in purely monetary terms. The climate change implications that affect both specimen preservation and the ecosystems from which specimens are drawn require museums to adapt their conservation strategies to accommodate environmental conditions that may differ significantly from those experienced during previous decades or centuries. The potential for rising temperatures, changing humidity patterns, and extreme weather events to threaten collection integrity demands proactive planning and investment in resilient preservation systems. The digital preservation initiatives that create electronic records of museum collections offer possibilities for sharing specimens virtually while reducing handling of fragile originals, but also raise questions about how to ensure long-term accessibility of digital information as computer systems and file formats become obsolete. The challenge of maintaining digital archives across technological transitions may prove even more complex than preserving physical specimens. The interdisciplinary collaboration that characterizes modern museum research creates opportunities for discoveries that emerge from the intersection of previously separate fields of inquiry, as specialists in taxonomy, ecology, genetics, chemistry, and other disciplines combine their expertise to reveal new aspects of natural systems and evolutionary processes. These collaborative approaches often produce insights that no single specialist could achieve working independently. The community outreach programs that extend museum influence beyond institutional boundaries demonstrate how properly designed educational initiatives can transform public understanding of environmental issues while building grassroots support for conservation policies and practices. The ripple effects of these programs often extend across multiple generations as participants share their enhanced environmental awareness with family members and social networks. The legacy planning that ensures institutional continuity across leadership transitions and changing social priorities requires careful attention to preserving organizational mission and values while maintaining flexibility to adapt to evolving circumstances. The museums that survive and thrive across multiple centuries typically demonstrate remarkable consistency in their commitment to core purposes, while showing equal remarkable adaptability in their methods and approaches. In the deepest philosophical sense, the museum serves as humanity's attempt to create permanence within systems characterized by constant change, its collections representing efforts to preserve fragments of the natural world's incredible diversity against the entropy that continuously erodes all organized systems. This work connects contemporary curators and researchers to an ancient human impulse toward preservation and memory, their daily activities participating in cultural traditions that extend back to the earliest human attempts to create meaning through the careful arrangement and interpretation of objects that embody relationships between past, present, and future. The quiet satisfaction that comes from contributing to these preservation efforts reflects the deep human need to participate in projects whose significance extends beyond individual lifespans, creating connections to both ancestral wisdom and future possibilities that give meaning to present moment activities while placing them within contexts vast enough to dwarf personal concerns, yet intimate enough to inspire dedication and bees of lice. Love. As our journey through these hallowed halls draws to its gentle close, we leave behind more than mere collections of specimens and artifacts. We carry with us the understanding that every butterfly pinned behind glass once danced on summer breezes, every fossil once walked beneath alien skies, and every star map once guided ancient mariners across uncharted seas. The museum stands as humanity's promise to remember, to preserve, and to honor the intricate web of life that connects all things across time and space. Blathers continues his patient vigil. Celeste charts her celestial courses, and the exhibits rest in their cases, waiting to share their secrets with tomorrow's visitors. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world holds its breath between night and day, the museum breathes with the slow rhythm of ages, keeping watch over treasures both great and small. Sleep now, knowing that somewhere, dedicated guardians tend the flames of knowledge and wonder, ensuring that the stories of earth and sky, land and sea, past and future, will endure for generations yet to come in these sacred halls of eternal contemplation.